Every generation of kids is a little different from the one that came before. As pediatric care providers, the pace of change may suddenly seem too fast to process. So, what is so different and special about today's youth? Welcome to today's presentation about today's youth, brought to you by the 3M Oral Care Solutions Division. The purpose of this presentation is to deliver insights about the differences in today's kids and teens, and to share some research on how service providers, like dentists and their staff members, can better understand them. We are referring to this cohort of youth as the new youth because there are certain aspects of their life never seen before in previous generations of youth that have shaped who they are. The new youth is actually made up of two different generations. Generation Z are those between 8 and 22 years old, and the newest generation, Generation Alpha, are between 0 and 8 years old. Today, we are going to discuss multiple aspects of the new youth. We will start by debunking a few myths people have about this generation. We are going to cover the parts of them that define their generation and what makes them different than previous generations. We will talk about how they consume media and entertainment, and how they spend their free time differently. They are fundamentally changing multiple industries. Then, after going through all of this research, we will also cover the multiple implications for how a provider can understand them and provide services in line with their wants and needs. We're going to start with what defines them. This will answer the question of what are the characteristics that define their generation and what make them unique. The first myth speaks to their obsession of technology. Many people believe that Gen Z, the generation that has followed millennials, is too distracted by all of their technology to pay attention and really connect with the real world. But in reality, this generation of youth, ages 8 to 22, processes information faster than any generation before them. This means they are able to actually multitask and simultaneously be connected digitally and in the real world. However, this fast information processing ability also means they have a short attention span. This is thanks to the digital world of Snapchat and Vine that gave them endless amounts of immediate gratification. The second misconception of this new youth is that because they are digitally intertwined, they have lost their ability to have personal interaction. In fact, they are just more comfortable relating in more different ways. This generation doesn't see video chat as different than a face-to-face conversation, and they don't see conversations happening on digital as different than in the real world. It is not that they have lost the ability to have personal interactions in the real world. It is simply that they don't put a premium value on real-world conversations like older generations do. In fact, 74% of Generation Z prefer to communicate face-to-face with colleagues in the workplace. They value personal interaction even more than millennials did before. Many people think that Gen Z is just like the millennial generation that came before them. They are expected to follow the same desires of the generation before them. Millennials are known for disrupting the workplace by creating collaborative working styles and open concept spaces. The new youth have a different viewpoint on this. When given the option to arrange a group of desks, millennials would opt for a collaborative arrangement and assemble the desks into a circle. Generation Z will harness a do-it-yourself mentality at work. In fact, 69% of Gen Z would rather have their own workspace than share it with someone else. Teens always get the stereotype of not being good with money, but as a generation, the new youth goes against that. That's likely because their childhoods were marked by the Great Recession. The oldest Gen Zs, who were born in 1997, were 11 years old when the recession hit in 2008. Gen Z is already concerned about the future economy and being as debt-ridden as the millennials before them. Now that we have broken a few of the primary myths about this generation, we will begin by going deep with what defines them. This will answer the question of what are the characteristics that define their generation and make them unique. The first characteristic is that they are hyper-aware of culture. They are completely in tune with current events and happenings. They pay much more attention to culture than previous generations of kids have. This is because they have grown up with limitless access to information, with Google in their pocket and social media being a consistent main source of news to them. They have a constant connection to the world and infinite levels of knowledge. This constant connection is a fundamentally defining quality of this youth. The social media, technology, and cyberbullying, which are all aspects of being constantly connected, are shaping the new youth's view of the world. Evidence of their hyper-awareness can be seen in the rejuvenation of student activism. This is something that millennials lost when they were students, but the new youth is bringing back. The motivation behind this behavior varies from individual to individual. For some, they feel the need to speak out in the face of uncertainty and pressure they see themselves put under. Others theorize that this new generation, which is connected more digitally than ever before, have developed this behavior in an effort to generate content for their social media pages. Either way you look at it, this new generation is connecting more to the world and paying more attention to culture than generations before them. They are especially passionate about feminism and women leadership, body positivity and self-love, and inclusivity and celebrating differences. According to a 𝗧𝗵𝗲 marketing study, 68% of teens said that companies have an obligation to solve social problems. 67% of teens said they look to themselves to solve those same issues, while only 10% said that neither themselves nor corporations have the obligation to solve social issues. And 67% of teens say they are more likely to purchase from a company that supports a cause versus one that doesn't. Generation Z has been more assertive when it comes to activism than millennials were at the same age. According to a 𝗧𝗵𝗲 marketing survey, more than a quarter of their teenage respondents have attended protests or rallies, or they have boycotted a company. This hyper-awareness of culture has led them to being even more thoughtful and pragmatic about their decision-making than millennials before them. This can be seen in multiple facets of their lives. They are more thoughtful about where their food comes from. In fact, 35% of teenagers are consuming more organic options than 1 year ago. They are uniquely pragmatic and even pessimistic in relationships, where nearly half of teens today think that most people cannot be trusted. Even when it comes to money, where kids are notoriously unconscious of the meaning of it, the new youth are more pragmatic and would rather save than spend it. And with their parents teaching them that health and wellness is about holistic balance, they have a more comprehensive view of health. Along with eating more organic foods, the eating habits of kids have changed drastically over the past generation. Parents of the new youth are significantly more sugar conscious than previous generations of parents. 60% of parents with young children and teens report saying no to their kids' food choice based on its sugar content. In addition, 49% of teens surveyed agreed that drinking soda is harmful to their health. A reduction in sugar consumption is only a small aspect of the changing diet for youth. Today's youth are also more interested in multicultural foods than generations past. 62% of Gen Z young adults say they cook international cuisines at home, compared to only 46% of millennials. For a dental care provider, reduction in sugar and diversified palates can lead to overall improved oral health for today's youth. Just like teens have a hard time opening up to the doctor, half of teens today think that most people in general cannot be trusted. This presents a challenge for people in the service industry that develop personal relationships with clients. This distrust of people also carries over to businesses. In 2017, 65% of teens and young adults believe that businesses generally behave ethically. In 2018, that figure dropped nearly 20 points to 48%. 75% believe that business leaders focus on their own agendas rather than serving society. More so, 62% believe businesses have no ambition outside of making money. Because of this, building good rapport with young people is essential to earning their business in the future. Many Gen Z youth witness parents go through hardships during the Great Recession. Because of this, saving money is of greater importance than generations past. Value shopping and hunting for deals are more common for Gen Z than their millennial counterparts. Many of today's youth say they regularly use coupons and participate in reward programs. For them, utilizing reward programs does not necessarily translate to brand loyalty. 81% will switch from a preferred brand to a different one if they make the same product at a higher quality. 72% of them will switch from a preferred brand to a different one if they make the same product but at a lower price. In addition to saving money on a daily basis, 64% of youth have already began thinking about financial planning. Service providers need to prove they offer a high value to today's youth to keep them around. In addition, they are pragmatic and thoughtful because they are connected to the world like no generation before them. This thoughtfulness defines how they see their future. They are worried about their future because it is shrouded in uncertainty, and this thoughtfulness and skepticism has even driven them to start to take actions. This is what I like to call the "we didn't do that stuff when I was a kid" effect, because this is what adults say when they see these youth taking actions aimed at benefiting their future selves. Because previous generations didn't take the actions many of the new youth are taking. An example of this is that 63% of youth are worried about their future, and many have already started bank accounts as a way to start helping their future selves. They know the potential and prevalence of technology that has come about in their childhoods. It will only continue to grow up with them, so they see their future and careers being defined by it. The way they will adapt their future careers to this change is by being more focused on skills than specialization. They won't have a linear career path like previous generations have had. They will be in portfolio-type career paths and act as collectors of skills by pursuing nano degrees where, instead of mastering one subject over a long period of time, they will elect to get proficient in multiple skills within a shorter period of time. Meaning, much like their lives right now, they will continue to be in a constant state of learning and working on skill sets that complement technology, problem solving, communication, and mathematics. But as of today, they are still seeing their future ideal careers much like children before them. When you ask them what they want to be when they grow up, many still say those professions that they've interacted with and idolized as kids. Though, who they interact with and idolize is different than before, with gamer and YouTuber appearing as top desired professions. Instead of investing thousands in a traditional university education, the next generation will turn to nano degrees, such as those offered by Udacity, which typically cost $200 a month and take 6 to 9 months to finish. The biggest development in higher education in the next decade will be the college MVP, minimum viable product, the smallest, simplest unit that meets students' needs. Moving on, let's talk about what this new generation aspires to. The new youth have a perceived access to infinite knowledge and a realistic view of the future, but still the idealist faith in themselves that children have always had. Their parents have long told this generation of kids that they can be whatever they want and have left this new youth feeling empowered. So more than any generation before them, they are pursuing entrepreneurship and maintain an "I'll do it myself" mentality. 68% see themselves wanting to be an entrepreneur over working for another company, and 77% of teenagers are already doing that. Here are some examples of new youth members already changing the world, including 𝗧𝗵𝗲, an American chef who owns Jim Restaurant in New York City. If you dig into entrepreneurs changing the business landscape, you don't have to dig far before you run into members of the new youth disrupting traditional thought. Their awareness of culture has only helped them be more empathetic, making them the most empathetic generation ever. They are also the first minority-majority generation of youth, meaning that, for the first time ever, the collective of minority races will be larger than the majority race. Combining their hyper-awareness of the world and the diversity of their cohort means they celebrate differences. They actually value others based on what makes them unique, not on how well they fit in. They value each other on their unique qualities, so they are constantly looking for unique qualities of their own. They are breaking apart traditional peer groups, meaning you can no longer walk into a high school lunchroom and see the stereotypical groups like jocks or band kids. Instead, you will see each person defining themselves differently, and groups will not be so easily defined. And with everyone looking for unique parts of themselves, identities have become fluid and ever-evolving. This means that they are changing themselves often, not to fit in, but to be special and unique. This fluid definition of identity has even shaped what they seek out. The influencers they respond to and follow go beyond inclusivity and are social justice champions. They've begun to value even unexpected types of hobbies, like embroidery or calligraphy, as ways to be unique. Now that we've covered a few characteristics that define them, their values, and what they aspire to, we can cover the unique ways they interact in the world. First, millennials got the credit of being digital natives, since huge technological advances happened in their youth. But the new youth are actually even more so digital natives because technology had fully penetrated culture by the time they were growing up, and it has been there since they were born. 43% of the new youth have had a tablet since they were under 8 years old, and the average age the new youth got a smartphone was 10. For that reason, they are most comfortable on these smartphones and tablets, which are the technologies they've had the longest. On top of that, they overwhelmingly prefer video. It is their preferred mode of entertainment, with over 50% of all of their media consumption coming from video. And that is compared to video games, social media, reading, browsing the internet, and more. Their digital and mobile-first style also defines what type of video they prefer. For video content, the primary platform is YouTube. 61% prefer the snackable and highly specific content of YouTube over TV. Compared to other online social platforms, 95% of youth access YouTube on a regular basis, compared to 69% for Instagram, 67% for Facebook, 67% for Snapchat, and 52% for Twitter. When asked, which one could you not live without? 50% of them said YouTube, with the next highest percentage being 15% for Snapchat. Also notable is that girls were more likely to favor Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and Pinterest, while boys were more likely to favor YouTube and the video streaming platform Twitch. They also have redefined what influential means in terms of idols. Their influencers are not celebrities, but are people they view as peers. When kids were asked, which kinds of celebrities would you trust for advice about buying tech gadgets, 70% said they trust online-based celebrities, compared to only 21% for mainstream celebrities. YouTubers and social media influencers are thought of more as friends than someone you are a fan of because they are more relatable. In turn, these are the people that the new youth trust, look to as idols, and follow religiously. As the true digital natives, they have gone or are currently going through the process of forming their identity and using social media as a tool to do that. For that reason, they are not simply accessing or addicted to social media. Their actual identity exists on social media. This is why they are so careful and specific about what gets shared on those platforms. Their profiles are actually pieces of who they are. So, when you ask them about how they exist on social media, they will tell you that it is easier to be themselves online. They show their true selves on social media. They present the best possible versions of themselves on social media. A version of their identity lives on these platforms. Just like you show a different part of your identity when you're with your parents versus your friends. The new youth shows different parts of their identities when on Instagram versus Snapchat versus in real life. No part of their identity is more or less true or more or less important. But the real life and social media parts of their identities are all important and need to be managed. So, when your identity lives on social media, it is only natural that social media gets complicated. They have developed new sets of norms and unspoken rules that they follow on social media and expect others to follow as well. Being constantly connected and managing an identity on social media makes the entire mediascape stressful. For this reason, the new youth is pushing back on the prevalence of this new media reality. And they are trusting newspapers and other media sources like previous generations have. And they are increasingly unhappy with social media, with 34% threatening to leave the platforms. Technology means many different things to Generation Z. 57% of Gen Z uses messaging apps at least half the time they use their phone. 98% of Gen Z owns a smartphone. They also expect to get their first smartphone younger than any other generation. 52% of Gen Z reports that their smartphone is their most important internet device. 88% of Gen Z reports having access to a desktop or laptop computer at home. The rising popularity of technology might be why kids aren't getting enough exercise. According to a 2018 CDC report, 43% of the kids studied use electronics for 3 or more hours a day. This usage has surged from 22.1% in 2003 to 43% in 2017. And 20.7% of adolescents report watching 3 or more hours of TV per day, although this rate did decline from 42.8% in 1999. One of the many industries today's youth is changing is sports. Youth sports participation is significantly down for various reasons. One being that only 35% of youth coaches are trained to coach the sport. High participation costs are also a key reason why participation is down. Additionally, not all team sport venues are inclusive, with higher profile leagues only allowing the top performing players to participate. In 2008, 45% of kids ages 6 to 12 played a team sport regularly, As recent as October 2018, that number dipped to 37%. And children from low-income households are 3 times less likely to be physically inactive. There is some positive news. While youth sports numbers are down, high school sports participation has been on the rise in the United States. Based on figures from the 51 NFHS member state high school associations in the U.S., the number of participants in high school sports reached an all-time high of almost 8 million. Thanks to increases in all of the top 10 participatory sports, the number of female participants reached an all-time high of 3.4 million. In general, Gen Alpha and Gen Z kids have become less physically active than previous generations. With only 1 in 3 children being physically active every day. Let's continue our discussion and take a closer look into their health and well-being. How healthy are kids today? I would like to share some interesting insights about the eating habits of these new youth. Although the way kids consume food has changed and has become a large part of everyday life, access to healthy food is still limited for millions of people, in many cases due to location and income. In fact, 16.7 million kids had limited access to safe and nutritionally good food multiple times per year. 6.5 million American children live in food deserts, areas that are more than a mile away from a supermarket. And nearly 45% of children living in poverty are overweight or obese, as compared to 22% of children living in households with incomes 4 times the poverty level. Research shows that nearly 1 in 5 kids in the U.S. are obese. The percentage of childhood obesity has tripled since the 1970s. An obese child has a higher risk of asthma, sleep apnea, and other health conditions. Overweight adolescents have a 70% chance of becoming overweight or obese adults. Recent reports project that by 2030, half of all adults in the United States will be obese. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the time the topic of nutrition isn't discussed thoroughly in a typical doctor's visit, given both the time constraints and the discomfort associated with the difficult topic of an eating disorder. As a result, healthcare professionals are less likely to notice the warning signs of eating disorders, which have grown amongst teens. 10 in 100 teenage girls in the U.S. suffer from an eating disorder, with ages 12 to 25 the most common ages for eating disorders to occur among all genders. In a survey of 10,000 teens with eating disorders, 88% of them also suffer from anxiety, depression, or a behavior disorder. Symptoms of these eating disorders don't bode well for oral health either. Vomiting could lead to stomach acid constantly flowing over the teeth. This can cause loss of the tooth's enamel, and teeth can become weak, change color, and become brittle. The lack of proper nutrition causes gums and other soft tissue inside the mouth to bleed very easily. Someone with anorexia that doesn't have enough calcium or vitamin D will suffer from tooth decay and gum disease. A lack of iron could lead to a development of sores inside the mouth. Switching gears to mental health, it is not uncommon for children to be diagnosed with both depression and an anxiety disorder. 1 in 6 children aged 2 to 8 has a mental, behavioral, or developmental disorder. As many as 2 to 3% of children ages 6 to 12 and 6 to 8% of teens may have serious depression. And an estimated 2.8 million adolescents ages 12 to 17 had at least one major depressive episode in 2014. About 80% of kids with an anxiety disorder and 60% with depression are not getting treatment. Attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD, is also among the most commonly diagnosed mental disorders in children. In fact, almost 10% of kids ages 2 to 17, approximately 6.1 million, have been diagnosed with ADHD. Another interesting factoid about the health habits of Generation Z is their lack of face time with doctors. Children are more likely to visit the doctor only when they are experiencing a problem rather than for a wellness checkup. Problem-focused visits number 173 per 100 population, compared to well-care visits, which number 59 per 100 population. Wellness visits among these children occur much less frequently than we might assume. Physician office visit rates for well and problem-focused care were significantly lower for children aged 16 to 17 than for children aged 5 and under. We will discuss utilization of dental care by children later in this presentation. A health habit of kids that has changed for the better in the last few years is alcohol and tobacco use. However, the use of e-cigs, also known as vaping, has increased. In 2016, 5% of 12th graders said they smoked in the last 30 days, compared to 16% in 2005. And smoking tobacco with a hookah is significantly lower, at 7.8%, compared to 21.4% in 2013. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, vaping rates have increased, with 37% of 12th graders reporting vaping in the past 12 months, as compared to 27.8% in 2017. Among 8th graders, 10.9% reported vaping in the past 12 months. Also, in 2016, 16% of 12th graders said they had 5 or more alcoholic beverages in the last 2 weeks, down from an astonishing 29% in 2005. While the new youth has its differences from other generations, there are obvious similarities as well. One of these being the love of sugary drinks. 2/3 of children in the U.S. consume at least one sugary beverage on any given day. 30% of kids have 2 or more a day. Energy drinks are one of the most popular sugary beverages. According to a U.S. News report, teenagers accounted for $16.3 billion worth of energy drinks purchased in 2016. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, teens should not have more than 100 milligrams of caffeine a day. Energy drinks can have anywhere from 70 to 200 milligrams per serving. Sugar-sweetened drinks are linked to weight gain, diabetes, cavities, and high cholesterol. Now, let's change directions a bit and talk about how these youth are having a significant impact on industry. So, moving on. When every generation of youth comes to be, they shake up multiple industries. The new youth is no different. Here are some of the ways these kids really are significant industry influencers. As a result of this decline in sports participation and increase in technology use, another major industry kids are disrupting is entertainment. Sports are being redefined. As mentioned earlier, from 2008 to 2012, when the eldest of the new youth were getting into high school, the prevalence of basketball, baseball, soccer, and football all fell. At the same time, esports, the formal name for competitive video games, began to rise and is tied as Generation Z's favorite sport. They consume esports like they prefer to consume all other media, by video on YouTube or streaming platforms. Esports have shown the importance of video games to this generation. Playing video games is not a pastime, but is more like a sport that has deep penetration with the lives and culture of the new youth. It explains why so many teens play video games often and like the interactive and social nature of esports. They're also reshaping shopping with their pragmatic view of the world. They are digital natives, but actually like the activity of shopping in store. They actually prefer the physical brick-and-mortar retail experience. They also are the generation that is going to push giving away their data to companies because they value the personal, collaborative, and interactive experiences they get by doing that. The chart at the bottom shows that Gen Y, which is another name for Gen Z, consults more sources when making purchasing decisions than previous generations. This is because they look at shopping pragmatically and are using that infinite access they've grown up with. Food and music are also being disrupted because of the nature of this generation. Food is getting a facelift by moving away from traditional meals. 42% of Gen Zers want street food on the menu. 23% prefer to build a menu out of snacks, and Gen Z orders takeout more than any other cohort. Social media has disrupted food culture more than most other categories. A social presence can make or break a restaurant's reputation with the new youth. The music landscape also looks different than it ever has before, which has made it a larger part of Gen Z's day-to-day life than other generations. 94% of Gen Zers cite music as important or very important, and 97% of Gen Z females listen to at least 5 musical genres on a regular basis. According to Google, these are the top artists that teens consider to be cool: 21 Pilots, Drake, Fall Out Boy, Beyoncé, Coldplay, The Beatles, Panic at the Disco. Beauty and fashion is another industry they are fundamentally changing. Mostly because they are participating in this industry more than ever before, with 90% of American girls ages 9 to 17 being beauty product users. Social media brings beauty and fashion into the lives of the new youth on a regular basis, with influencers and peers constantly sharing what is trendy and creating pressure for the new youth to follow suit. Gen Z also has their own color that rivals millennial pink. Gen Z yellow represents the optimistic outlook of the game-changing teens, and it symbolizes the renewed hope for the future and the energy to engage in a purposeful way. This year's Back to School showcases the new youth's unique participation in fashion. Back to school fashion trends indicate super colorful and creative clothing with a fun, do-it-yourself aesthetic. Examples include pastel denims, high-contrast sneakers, and color-blocked clothing. Retro 80s-inspired nostalgia pieces like playful hoop earrings, translucent and colorful belts, and vintage sportswear. High-shine, glossy, and plastic materials that are both practical and playful. All-over prints including bright patterns, doodles and scribbles, and bold typography. As part of their holistic view of health, the new youth believes that beauty and self-care are not mutually exclusive. So, with fashion and beauty's prevalence, it is no surprise that self-care has also become more of a focus in their lives. Within 2017 alone, Google searches for self-care jumped 27%. New youth define self-care as things they do that helps them feel better both mentally and physically. So, self-care tends to be proactive and healthcare tends to be reactive to them. We have been seeing self-care brands acknowledging the new youth's mindset shift of being thought of as fashion and beauty products. Brands are posting themselves as a lifestyle choice and not just products. This means putting more thought into the experience of using the product, making the product and packaging as visually appealing as it is useful, refocusing efforts on marketing, participating at a premium price point, and adding additional wellness benefits. All of these tactics are borrowed from what the luxury industry has been doing for a long time, but it now has made it over to self-care and oral care. This has caused a trend to emerge where the new youth is using the Instagrammability of self-care brands for self-expression and exploration. Oral care is no exception here. As a self-care brand, oral care is being incorporated into beauty routines. This means dental care is more closely related to fashion and beauty routines than it has ever been before. Here are 3 oral care products that are acting like beauty brands and doing it well. You can see by these products as they have developed brands that are about a certain lifestyle, or they deliver benefits that go beyond the core benefit. Cocoa Floss is a floss that promises a better flossing experience, as well as infusions of tropical fruits and coconut oil for better taste and soothing effects. Their visual identity is designed for sharing on social media, and many of these companies use celebrities, social media influencers, and brand ambassadors. And these types of products are generally priced at a premium price point, yet they are still growing. Many of the products listed relate more closely to a healthy-looking mouth rather than a healthy mouth. This leads to our next point. Oral care and oral health are not synonymous. When respondents were asked what is most important to them regarding oral hygiene, 53% of people over the age of 25 said healthy teeth and gums. For people under the age of 25, only a third of them said that healthy teeth and gums were the biggest priority. Over half of the young people in the study prioritized fresh breath, white teeth, and clean-feeling teeth as most important to them. This speaks to many kids, teens, and young adults being self-conscious on their overall appearance. Having a clean mouth may be a priority for many. However, that does not necessarily mean that their overall dental hygiene is good. 1 in 3 people under the age of 25 consider how white their teeth are a top priority. For people over the age of 25, the number drops to 1 in 10. Activated charcoal teeth whitening kits became popular via social media marketing campaigns in 2018. Many social media influencers made sponsored posts that show them using a toothpaste with activated charcoal that turns your teeth and mouth completely black. Once rinsed, the product leaves teeth appearing whiter than before use. Many dentists are concerned about the abrasive nature of charcoal whitening kits, as they have the potential to wear enamel. This practice of activated charcoal whitening isn't used by most of Gen Z or Alpha, but shows how social media influencers can have an impact on oral health. For many of the new youth, dental hygiene takes a back seat to other aspects of their life. They don't believe they have the time to achieve a healthy mouth. The solution for many is mouthwash. Over 50% say they use mouthwash every time they brush their teeth. For people over the age of 25, only about a third say they use mouthwash every time they brush. This would be welcome news for their overall dental hygiene, except many admit to occasionally only using mouthwash instead of brushing their teeth. Many young people believe that the oral products and practices they use are beneficial to their dental hygiene. Oral care is far more than a footnote for personal care. It is important to continue to emphasize daily brushing and flossing as part of an oral care regimen to have a healthy mouth. We are all in agreement that oral care is important. So what is the state of oral health among today's youth? The good news is that data from the CDC shows when it comes to youth, oral health care has actually improved. For example, exactly half the kids in North America, ages 2 to 19, had cavities in 2011 through 2012. In 2015 through 2016, that number dropped to 43.1%. The bad news is the negative impact that poor oral health can have. There are studies that show that children tend to underperform in school and are less likely to be invited for playdates or become socialized at the same level as peers simply because of poor dentition. It is estimated that 181 million Americans wouldn't go to the dentist in 2018. And of course, a portion of those 181 million people are kids. According to a 2012 study, nearly 49 million people in the U.S. have trouble finding a dental provider, and when they do, out-of-pocket costs create a barrier for going. Furthermore, the majority of U.S. parents, 3/4, do not take their child to the dentist by their first birthday. Kids cannot afford to avoid the dentist. Despite the decrease in children with cavities, 1 in 4 children under the age of 5 have dental cavities. According to the CDC, tooth decay is one of the most common conditions among children. A common misconception is that because primary teeth exfoliate, caries is not a serious issue in a child's baby teeth. All dentists should help parents and patients to understand the vital importance of keeping even the smallest teeth as healthy as possible. Unfortunately, the prevalence of decay increases with age. 51.2% of kids ages 6 to 11 have tooth decay, while 67.5% of teens ages 16 to 19 have tooth decay. In fact, 37% of children ages 2 to 19 have untreated cavities. The mouth is the gateway to a person's overall health. If your oral health is in bad shape, that can be the first sign of a bigger problem. The potential negative consequences of poor oral health are numerous and can be severe. Children with tooth decay are prone to repeated infections of their ears and sinuses. Painful teeth can keep children from getting enough sleep, interfering with overall health and development. As the child gets older, an unhealthy mouth can be associated with obesity, diabetes, and even heart disease. According to the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, about 1 in 10 children with early childhood caries suffers pain, making chewing food painful enough to keep them from eating and getting adequate nutrition. The result can be that the child may fail to thrive, have reduced physical growth and weight due to insufficient consumption of nutritious food. Painful teeth may hinder young children from speaking, playing, going to school, or paying attention in class. Discolored, damaged, or missing teeth may hurt children's self-esteem and social development by making them afraid to smile or subjecting them to teasing and social ostracism. In the U.S., over 34 million school hours are lost each year due to dental problems. It is apparent that if children do not regularly see a dentist, it can have a major impact on their overall health. Please refer to your professional dental associations for further information about how you can help your patients and their families with dental health education. Knowing what we now know, and that was a lot of information to retain, I want to go over what I believe to be the key takeaways that you can use to be a better provider to the new youth. First, more than previous generations, these new youth are in tune with culture. They are up to date and opinionated on current events, so relate to them on those subjects. Talk to them about what they care about, which is no longer kids' stuff. They are focused on skill sets more than future careers. They need to be concerned more about what they like and are good at than a career title. Ask them about their interests, not what they want to be when they grow up. They care about what makes them unique. Look for and celebrate what makes them different than everyone else. For those of you looking to produce content for the new youth, utilize the way they use their phones and preference for video formats to your advantage. They enjoy immersive content that can be digested anywhere, anytime. In the same vein, if you are going to be a part of their lives on social media, understand that there is a set of norms established that you need to abide by. Their social media is one way that new youth project their identity into the world. So be conscious that anything they share is a reflection of their identity. For example, Instagram is for a curated identity. Snapchat is used to talk to close friends. Facebook is where parents are. Don't post too many things that are seen as bragging. Don't overpost too many pictures from one event. Don't shame anyone with your posts. Oral care and dentistry is now more than just a healthcare regimen. This audience of new youth is beginning to see oral care as a beauty routine. Talk to them about the self-care and beauty benefits of your services instead of simply the healthcare benefits, because that may be a better driver for them. Take the time to get to know your patients so they know they are more than an appointment to you and your staff. It's worth the investment. Thank you for watching our program. We hope that this 3M webinar provides you with a better understanding of what makes the new youth unique and how you may be able to better relate to them.